A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. I've heard a lot of good things about this, actually. It's been a while since I've read YA, young adult fiction, and typically now I'm not really drawn to that. I'm 32 years old, so maybe that's just why. But you know what? I'm not opposed to reading YA. Sometimes you just want an easier read, something a lot more casual, and YA tends to fit that bill. Also, considering that there's been a very long break from me reading, I know I've missed out on a lot. And I've heard a lot of good things about this. I like a mystery, I like a thriller, I like a horror. This isn't really horror though. At first I thought that's kind of where this was, because I thought this was blood at first actually, and now I'm realizing that it's yarn. I didn't realize it was a YA yet until I'd actually checked it out. A Good Girl's Guide to Murder is about a girl named Pip who lives in Connecticut, I believe. She is a high school senior, and about 5 years before then, a very popular girl in high school named Andy got murdered, and then her boyfriend, Sal, he ended up killing himself. It was believed that Sal ended up murdering Andy for whatever reason. He actually confessed to it, and so here we are. The whole town dislikes him, his family, even though his family was, had nothing to do with it, and, they weren't condoning that either. But again, that's, the son, the brother, so it's stuff that's hard to deal with either way. Here's the thing though, Andy doesn't believe that Sal did it. And so for her capstone project, which I think is just a fancy term for senior project, back in my day, we just called them senior projects. So for her senior project, she wanted to prove that Sal was innocent because she simply did not believe that he is the one who killed Andy. I'll tell you right now, I kind of like this. I gave this 3 stars, which is kind of in the middle of the road, I believe, for most people. One thing I like about this is it's a little bit different from stuff that I've typically read. You've got the transcripts and things like that. I just think that's, it's nice and different. The wording is pretty easy. I mean, it is a young adult, but sometimes young adult authors will try to sound more smart than they are. Okay, that's a weird way to put it. They just try to make the book sound a lot more smart using big words and whatever, and it takes away from the reading experience in my opinion. But this is a pretty easy read. I essentially read this in one day. I started off at night, right before I was going to sleep, reading about 60 pages, and then I spent 3-4 hours just reading the rest. I kind of wanted to just go ahead and finish it so I can make this video before I took it back to the library. And I was pretty kind of satisfied with the ending. I actually did not figure it out on my own who it was gonna be. I had a thought, and originally it was true, but of course, plot twist again, turns out it wasn't true. And I think this is the part where I'm gonna tell you exactly some things that threw me off, I didn't really like, and here is where we will begin spoilers. First and foremost, page 296 of the paperback edition. Why did you kill off the dog? And then you find out that it was actually an accident, which I guess only makes me feel a sliver of a bit better, like a sliver, like a splinter in your thumb, that sliver size of one. But you killed off Barney. Holly, why would you do that? I mean, at least I can know that the actual killer, who is Andy's sister, by the way, at least I can know that she was actually going to give Barney back. She wanted to, but what annoys the hell out of me is that she just didn't make sure that he actually went back, because it was dark and Barney got lost, confused, and ended up drowning in the river. So it was an accident. That part anyway, but obviously Becca kidnapped Barney, Pippa's dog, to, try to get Pip to stop digging into everything. So originally, we all thought that Pip's best friend's father was actually the one to murder Andy, because they had this sort of thing going, and then as it turns out, he accidentally injured her, gave her a head injury, and then sometime later on, a couple of weeks later, he thinks that he's found her on the side of the road, and so he just ends up kidnapping her and keeping her locked away in a house all these years. And when Pip confronts him about Barney, he is actually shocked to find out, and he's saying, I didn't, do that. It cuts him off though. He gets cut off by the cops, I think, and he just says, I didn't. And she doesn't realize yet until Becca's the one that is found out to be the actual murderer. And then even Becca tells her that she didn't mean for that to happen. You could also take that with a grain of salt. Either way, it sucks, because at the end of the day, even if it was actually an accident and she really did want to return him and be all safe and healthy and whatever, at the end of the day, she still took him and threatened him and her, and yeah. So I hated that, and I actually put the book down. I was in the community room, the laundry room, when I was reading, so if anyone had been in the room with me, they would have heard me be very, very sad about it. I didn't cry, but I was emotionally distraught for a good 5 minutes. That's pretty much the only thing I didn't really like about it. I mean, it doesn't break the book, but it made me sad. The only other thing that threw me off is, as it turns out, Holly is an author from England, and the setting takes place in the United States of America. It takes place in Connecticut. And it threw me off when, I can't remember who said this, I think it was the best friend. She said, at the moment, which usually Americans don't say that. It's usually British people who say that. And see, I grew up with British pop and, watching Skins and other English British shows, whatever. These are the people that would be saying at the moment or at the minute. Whereas Americans usually don't say it in the way that it was said here. The other word that threw me off is when Ravi is picking on Pip a little bit, and he was like, you fancy me and whatever. Usually Americans don't say that. It's usually British people who say that. I think maybe I've heard very, very occasionally of Americans saying like, oh, I fancy this person, or this person fancies me, but generally I never hear of another American saying that. So those two specific moments threw me off when I was reading it. And I was like, does this not take place in a high school in Connecticut? So why are we doing British slang here? I don't know. But yeah, overall, I gave this a 3. I liked it. I have learned that it is a series and there are 2 more books in this. My question to myself now is, do I like this book enough to continue with the series? I'm not sure what else is going to be talked about in the series. I know there's some stuff about like the cops or whoever that Pip has some suspicions about, and then I have no idea what's supposed to happen for book 3. I just don't know if I like the first one enough to really want to continue. I feel like my concern was about Andy, and now we're done with that. I don't know. Maybe y'all, if you read this, you've read the series, you can let me know, or rather you can let me know in the comments what you think about the series and if I should continue, and I'll add it to my TBR, but I don't think it's gonna happen anytime soon. There's other things that I need to read before this, But I liked it. I think A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson is something that you should check out if you want an easier read, young adult. It's casual. You don't really have to fret too much. You do have to think about it a little bit. That's one thing I will say. Sometimes you want a casual read because you don't have to think about it. Because this is a mystery, it's a thriller, it's a whodunit, you're gonna be thinking about it. But it's not like so complicated. Yeah, let me know what you think down below. I liked it. For more book reviews, if you'd like, I do have a Patreon page, so you can take a look at that. And I have reviews on books that I haven't really talked about on here quite yet. So consider, doing that if you would like. Subscribe to the channel. I'd love to have you, and we're about to hit a goal that I have currently for this little new channel of mine. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to watch this video. I very much appreciate it. Simon really wants to be put down, but if I put him down, he's gonna scream, so I have to wait. And yeah, thank you. I will see you later. Bye. Get down.